In a quiet mountain village, there lived a man named Tom. He was a quiet man, and most villagers knew him as someone who liked his own company. Tom owned a small wooden cabin at the edge of the forest. The cabin was old, but it had been in good condition because Tom took care of it carefully. Its walls were made of thick logs, and the small windows let sunlight in during the day. The chimney puffed smoke into the cold air whenever he lit a fire inside. Most of the village homes looked similar. They had simple roofs and walls. People built them to last the winter, but each year, the snow seemed stronger. Some roofs sagged, and some even broke under the weight of ice and snow. Tom had seen this happen many times. He knew how harsh the mountain winters could be. Unlike the other villagers, Tom spent a lot of time observing the weather. He watched the clouds move, the wind blow, and the way the snow fell. He listened to the birds and the animals, noticing how they prepared for winter. He saw how the forest changed color in autumn and how the first frost covered the ground. Tom had a careful mind, always thinking ahead. One spring morning, Tom woke up with a new idea. He decided to build a second roof above his cabin. It would not touch the first roof, but it would stand above it like a protective shield. He thought that if a strong blizzard came, the second roof could take the first blow of snow and wind. The cabin would stay safe underneath. Tom started collecting wood. He went into the forest and chose strong logs and planks. He carried them back to the cabin slowly, one by one. The neighbors saw him working and whispered among themselves. "What is he doing?" asked Ben, who lived across the road. "I think he has gone crazy," replied Mary, the baker. "One roof is enough. Why would anyone need two?" The children in the village found it funny. They pointed at Tom while he worked and laughed. "Look at him. He is building a hat for his cabin," they shouted. But Tom did not answer them. He continued working with care. He measured every piece of wood and every beam. He built a frame strong enough to hold heavy snow. The second roof had small spaces between it and the first roof, so the wind could pass through. He worked from morning until evening, stopping only to eat or rest. Some villagers tried to talk to him. "Tom, why are you wasting your time?" asked Henry, a carpenter. "I am not wasting time," Tom said quietly. "I am preparing for winter." Henry shook his head. "You are working for something that may never happen. You could have repaired your cabin or stored more firewood. This is too much effort." Tom smiled but did not argue. He liked to think about the future, and he believed in being ready for anything. Every year, the winters were harsher, and the storms came faster. He remembered last winter clearly. Snow had piled so high that the roof creaked. Ice broke branches, and the wind cut like knives through the trees. He had stayed awake, listening to the sound of the snow pressing down. He did not want to feel that fear again. By summer, the second roof was complete. It looked unusual. From far away, the cabin seemed to be wearing a hat, and the villagers could not stop talking about it. Some laughed. Some shook their heads. Only a few were curious and watched Tom with respect. Tom spent time inside the cabin, arranging firewood, blankets, and supplies for the coming winter. He made sure everything was ready, just in case. While others relaxed and enjoyed summer, he worked quietly and thoughtfully. One evening, the village elder walked to Tom's cabin. The elder had white hair and kind eyes, and he had lived in the village for many years. He looked at the second roof and asked, "Are you afraid of winter, Tom?" Tom looked at him calmly. "I am not afraid. I just want to be ready," he replied. The elder nodded. He did not understand completely, but he respected Tom's care and thoughtfulness. Most of the villagers could not imagine why anyone would need such a strange roof. As autumn approached, the wind grew colder. The leaves turned red and gold and fell slowly to the ground. Villagers worked hard to prepare for the winter. They chopped firewood, stored food, and repaired their roofs. Some of them looked at Tom's cabin and laughed again, but others began to feel a small worry. The first sign of snow came early. Tiny white flakes fell gently on the rooftops. Tom was ready. He walked outside and watched the snow fall on his second roof. The flakes melted a little on the warm wood and then slid down safely. The villagers were busy trying to clean their chimneys and windows. They were surprised at how calm Tom remained. As the days passed, the snow grew heavier. The wind began to howl. Villagers secured doors and windows. Some roofs began to sag under the weight of the snow. People called for help and worked together to remove it. Tom's cabin stayed quiet. The second roof held the snow in its place and shielded the first roof below. He walked inside calmly, tending to the fire, and watching the storm from his window. He thought about the winter nights ahead, knowing his cabin was protected. Ben stopped by one evening. He looked at the cabin and said, "I guess your roof is working. It looks strange, but it seems strong." Tom smiled softly. "It is not strange. It is prepared." Mary, the baker, also came by. She had carried a basket of bread. "I never thought your idea would work. I might have to try something like this next year," she said. Tom nodded. He appreciated their concern and their growing respect, but he did not seek attention. His main goal was safety and preparation. The villagers continued their work, chopping wood and clearing snow. The forest seemed quiet but alive. Animals moved carefully, looking for shelter. The wind blew through the trees with a soft whistle. Tom's cabin, with its unusual second roof, stood firm against the first signs of winter. The storm was coming, stronger than any before. Villagers did not know it yet, but this winter would test their courage and preparation. Only those who were ready would remain safe. Tom, with his careful planning and his second roof, was about to face the challenge with calm and confidence. Even as the sun set behind the mountains, the cabin looked peaceful. The fire glowed warmly through the windows, and smoke drifted slowly into the cold air. Tom stood near the fireplace, thinking about the storm ahead. He felt ready. He had done everything he could to protect himself. And soon, the blizzard would arrive. The villagers laughed at the roof, called it strange, and teased Tom. But soon, they would see that preparation and foresight could save a life. The mountain had a lesson for them all, and Tom was the first to understand it. After the summer passed, the mountain village prepared for the coming winter. The air became crisp and cold, and the days grew shorter. Villagers hurried to finish their work before the snow arrived. They chopped firewood, stacked it carefully near their homes, and stored vegetables, grains, and other supplies. The village streets were filled with people carrying logs and baskets. The smell of fresh bread from Mary's bakery mixed with the scent of pine from the forest. Tom's cabin stood quietly at the edge of the forest. His second roof, which had once made people laugh, now looked like a crown in the fading sunlight. He moved calmly around his home, stacking more firewood inside and checking the windows and doors. His movements were slow and deliberate. Every detail mattered. He wanted to make sure his cabin was safe from the cold, wind, and snow that would soon arrive. One afternoon, dark clouds began to appear over the mountains. The sky grew heavy, and a cold wind blew through the village. Tom stepped outside and looked up. He noticed how the clouds gathered quickly, covering the blue sky in shades of gray. Birds flew low, searching for shelter, and the animals in the forest moved closer to the trees. Tom felt a familiar sense of caution. Winter was coming faster this year, and it would be stronger than before. In the village, people noticed the clouds too. Some villagers felt uneasy. "The storm is coming early," Ben said, frowning as he stacked wood near his home. Mary looked worried. "We must prepare more quickly," she said. "I hope our roofs hold up this year." Tom continued his preparations quietly. He checked the firewood, moved blankets to the warmest corner of his cabin, and made sure that his stove and chimney were ready. He even tied extra ropes to the cabin walls to strengthen them against the wind. Villagers often wondered why he spent so much time preparing, but Tom knew that being ready before the storm was better than being trapped during it. As evening came, the wind grew stronger. The first snowflakes began to fall gently from the sky. They were soft and white, drifting slowly through the air. The villagers looked out their windows in surprise. It was earlier than they had expected. Children ran outside and tried to catch the flakes on their hands, laughing as the cold snow melted quickly. Tom watched the snow from his porch. It landed on the second roof first, then slid down safely. He smiled, knowing the roof was working exactly as he had planned. The space between the two roofs allowed the wind to pass through, so the first roof beneath stayed safe. The cabin remained calm and warm inside, and the fire crackled pleasantly in the fireplace. The villagers, however, were not so calm. Their roofs were already starting to get heavy with snow. Some roofs creaked under the weight, and a few small branches fell onto the shingles. People climbed ladders, trying to clear the snow, but the flakes kept coming. The wind howled through the streets, making everyone feel uneasy. Ben stopped by Tom's cabin. He was shaking slightly from the cold. "Your roof looks strange," he said, "but it seems stronger than mine. I hope my cabin survives." Tom nodded and replied calmly, "The winter will be strong, but preparation can make a difference. Yours will be safe if you take care of it." Mary came soon after, carrying a basket of bread and fresh cheese. She stopped at Tom's porch and looked at the second roof with admiration. "I did not think your idea would work," she said. "But now, I see how useful it is. Maybe I should try something similar next year." Tom smiled. "It is never too early to prepare," he said. "A little effort now can save a lot of trouble later." The snow continued to fall through the night. By morning, a thin blanket covered the village. Roads became slippery, and the rooftops were weighed down. Villagers worked hard to remove the snow from their homes. Many roofs sagged slightly, and some began to crack. The wind blew strongly, rattling the windows and doors. Tom's cabin, however, remained calm and secure. The second roof carried most of the weight, protecting the cabin below. Inside, Tom moved quietly, checking his supplies and making sure the fire stayed burning. He thought about the villagers and hoped they would remain safe too. He knew that many had not prepared enough, and the storm was just beginning. As the day progressed, the wind grew even stronger. Snow fell heavily, covering the trees, streets, and rooftops. The forest became silent, except for the sound of the wind and the occasional snapping of branches. Animals stayed hidden, and birds could no longer fly easily. Tom watched carefully, ready to adjust the ropes and supports on his cabin if necessary. Villagers struggled to keep their homes safe. Some worked together, clearing snow from each other's roofs. Others stayed inside, worried about the cold. The children could not play outside anymore. Even small tasks became difficult in the thick snow and wind. Tom walked outside for a moment to observe the village. He noticed several roofs bending under the weight of the snow. Ben and Mary were helping their neighbors, but the task was exhausting. They glanced at Tom's cabin and saw the second roof standing tall. There was no sagging, no cracks, and no danger. Some villagers began to whisper quietly, realizing that Tom's strange idea might have been smart after all. By evening, the snowfall turned heavier. The wind whistled through the streets and the trees, making the cold feel sharper. Villagers hurried inside their homes, checking doors, windows, and fireplaces. Tom stayed calm. He filled the stove with more wood, moved blankets to the beds, and ensured that water and food were within reach. As the night grew darker, the storm grew stronger. Snow fell in thick sheets, covering everything in white. The villagers listened to the wind howling and the occasional snapping of trees. They worried about their roofs and homes, hoping they would survive until morning. Inside his cabin, Tom sat near the fire, sipping hot tea. The second roof above him held the snow safely, and the space between the roofs allowed the wind to pass freely. He thought about the coming days and nights, knowing that preparation was the key to surviving the winter. Some villagers, seeing the calm and safety of Tom's cabin, began to feel respect for him. They had laughed at the second roof before, but now they understood that careful planning could make a difference. Tom had not only protected his home but had also shown the importance of foresight to the village. The storm had only just begun. The first heavy snowfall was a warning of what was to come. The mountains were about to face a strong blizzard, and only those who were prepared would remain safe. Tom, with his second roof, strong cabin, and careful planning, was ready to face the challenge. The villagers looked out their windows, shivering and worried. Some whispered about Tom's strange idea, and a few even considered strengthening their own roofs. The wind blew, the snow fell, and the night grew colder. The blizzard was coming, and everyone would soon see the value of preparation and foresight. Tom, calm and confident, watched the storm from his warm cabin. The second roof above him protected the home from the first heavy snow. He knew that the coming blizzard would test the village, but he felt ready. The forest stood silent and white, the mountains loomed in the distance, and the snow continued to fall. The first signs of winter had arrived, and the villagers realized that not everyone was foolish for preparing. Some ideas that seemed strange could turn out to be the most important when danger came. Tom's second roof was more than wood and nails. It was a shield, a lesson, and a promise that careful thinking could save lives. The morning began with heavy clouds hanging low over the mountains. The wind had grown stronger than the villagers had ever seen at this time of year. Snow fell in thick flakes, covering the trees, roads, and rooftops in a blanket of white. Tom stepped outside his cabin. The second roof above him already carried a layer of snow, but it stood firm, holding the weight without bending or cracking. Villagers hurried through the streets, trying to protect their homes. Some carried ladders to remove snow from their roofs. Others worked in teams, carrying logs and tying branches that had fallen from the trees. The wind whipped their faces, making their eyes water and their hands sting with cold. Everyone felt the power of the storm. Ben, who had often laughed at Tom's second roof, was now worried about his own home. His roof sagged under the weight of the snow, and ice clung to the shingles. He struggled to remove it, but the snow fell faster than he could clear it. Mary, the baker, helped him, but even together they could not keep up. Tom watched from his porch. He noticed the effort of his neighbors and felt a quiet satisfaction. His cabin stood strong and safe. He had prepared for this moment. The wind howled through the village, rattling windows and doors, but the cabin remained calm. Snow slid gently off the second roof, falling to the ground without harming the structure below. The storm grew stronger as the day progressed. Trees bent under the wind, and some branches broke, falling onto the roads. The animals in the forest hid quietly, sensing the danger. Villagers struggled to keep their homes intact, moving carefully to avoid slipping on the icy paths. Inside his cabin, Tom stayed focused. He checked the fire to make sure it burned brightly. He moved blankets closer to the beds, ensured water and food were easily reachable, and tied extra ropes to secure the cabin walls. He thought about the villagers and hoped that they were safe as well. By afternoon, the blizzard reached its peak. Snow fell in thick sheets, and the wind screamed through the village. Visibility was almost zero. Roads disappeared under the snow, and it became impossible to see across the streets. The village seemed trapped under a white curtain. Villagers huddled inside their homes, feeling fear for the first time in weeks. Some had tried to clear the snow from their roofs earlier, but the storm had grown too strong. They listened to the creaking of their houses, the snapping of branches outside, and the whistling of the wind through the village. Many prayed silently that their homes would survive the night. Tom, however, remained calm. He knew the importance of preparation. The second roof above his cabin carried the heavy snow, protecting the structure below. The space between the two roofs allowed the wind to pass through, preventing pressure from building and keeping the first roof intact. Inside, the cabin was warm and safe. The fire crackled, and the wind's howl sounded like music compared to the chaos outside. Some villagers noticed Tom's cabin and stopped their work to look. Even Ben and Mary paused, shivering in the cold. They could see that while many roofs bent and cracked under the snow, Tom's cabin was steady. For the first time, some villagers began to respect the unusual design of the second roof. It was not strange. It was clever. The blizzard continued for hours. Trees bent dangerously under the snow, and some fell across the roads. The village became silent except for the wind and the occasional crash of ice or wood. The villagers stayed inside, hoping their roofs would hold. They watched the snow pile up, and some began to understand the value of preparation. Inside his cabin, Tom thought about the storm. He remembered the winters from years ago when snow had crushed weak roofs. He remembered the fear of being trapped inside a cabin with walls that could break under the snow. That fear had guided every decision he had made. He had worked hard, thought carefully, and built the second roof to survive this exact moment. By evening, the blizzard showed no signs of stopping. Snow continued to fall, piling higher and higher. The village streets were unrecognizable. The trees were heavy with ice, and some roofs showed cracks under the snow. The villagers were tired and cold, but they could see Tom's cabin standing strong. They whispered to each other, amazed that one man had been able to protect his home when so many others struggled. Ben finally walked to Tom's cabin, carrying a small lantern. "Your roof. It is holding," he said, shivering. "I thought it was strange, but it looks like you were right." Tom nodded calmly. "It is not just the roof. It is preparation. Careful thought and planning make the difference." Mary came soon after, carrying some food she had prepared for her family. "I should have thought ahead like you," she said softly. "I spent all my energy moving snow, but it keeps coming. I can see now that planning ahead is better than reacting." Tom offered them a warm place near the fire, and they sat together quietly, watching the storm rage outside. The wind howled, the snow piled high, and the blizzard showed its full power. Yet inside the cabin, there was warmth, safety, and calm. The villagers stayed with Tom for a while, appreciating the shelter and protection of his home. They began to understand the lesson of the second roof. Sometimes, ideas that seem strange are the ones that keep people safe when danger arrives. Tom had not built the roof for attention or praise. He had built it to survive, and it had done exactly what he intended. As night fell, the blizzard reached its loudest and strongest point. The village was completely covered in snow. Many roofs had broken or bent. The wind whipped through the streets with such force that it was impossible to step outside. Yet Tom's cabin stood firm. Inside, the fire glowed warmly, and the wind's scream outside sounded distant and harmless. The villagers realized the truth. Tom's preparation had saved him. The second roof had taken the first blow of the blizzard, and the cabin beneath was completely safe. They whispered among themselves, understanding that careful thinking and foresight were more important than strength or size. By midnight, the blizzard began to lessen slightly, though the snow still fell heavily. The villagers huddled in their homes, tired and cold. They had survived the first night, but many roofs were damaged. Some homes had minor cracks, and others had broken beams. Yet Tom's cabin remained perfect, untouched by the storm. Tom sat quietly, watching the snow settle on the second roof. He thought about the village, the storm, and the lessons that winter had brought. Preparation was not always understood by others, but when danger came, it made all the difference. He felt calm and confident. He knew that he had done everything he could to protect his home and that the storm, no matter how strong, could not break it. The blizzard had tested the village, and the villagers had learned an important lesson. Tom's second roof was more than wood and nails. It was proof that careful thought, preparation, and action could save lives. The storm had raged fiercely, but one man's wisdom had held firm. As the night went on, the wind continued to howl, but inside the cabin, Tom remained safe. Outside, the village struggled, but the lesson of preparation would remain with everyone. The blizzard had shown its power, but it had also shown that foresight and careful planning were the keys to surviving the harshest winters. Tom looked around his cabin and smiled quietly. He had prepared, and his home had survived. The villagers would remember this winter, and they would never forget the second roof that had saved him. The blizzard lasted for 2 days, and when it finally ended, the village looked like a world made entirely of white. Snow covered the rooftops, streets, and trees. Ice sparkled on the branches, and the wind was finally calm. Villagers stepped outside slowly, looking around in awe and worry. Many roofs had sagged under the heavy snow. Some were cracked or broken. Branches had fallen on top of houses, and a few homes had minor damage from the wind. Roads were blocked by snow and fallen trees. The village looked peaceful and beautiful, but everyone knew it had been a dangerous storm. Tom's cabin stood at the edge of the forest, perfectly intact. The second roof had protected the home completely. Snow lay gently on top of it, sliding off in small piles without damaging the structure. Smoke rose from the chimney, and the cabin looked warm and inviting. Villagers began to gather near the center of the village, talking quietly about the storm. Ben shook his head and muttered, "I cannot believe how strong the snow was, and yet Tom's cabin is untouched. His roof saved him." Mary nodded. "I never thought a second roof could make such a difference," she said. "We laughed at him, but now I see that he was wiser than any of us." Word spread quickly through the village. People walked carefully to Tom's cabin, wanting to see it up close. They looked at the strong wooden beams of the second roof and the way it protected the first roof beneath. Some villagers shook their heads in disbelief. Others smiled in admiration. Tom welcomed them quietly. He offered a warm place near the fire and some tea and bread. Ben sat down carefully, still shivering from the cold. "I should have listened to you," he admitted. "Your cabin is strong because you thought ahead. We were careless." Tom smiled. "It is never too late to prepare," he said. "The storm has taught us all an important lesson. The snow was heavy, the wind was strong, but preparation can make the difference between safety and danger." The villagers began to share their experiences during the storm. Some had spent hours removing snow from their roofs, while others had stayed inside, hoping their homes would survive. Many homes had minor damage, and some roofs had cracks that would need repair. Tom helped where he could. He advised villagers on how to secure broken beams, tie loose shingles, and clear snow safely. He showed them how to use ropes and supports to strengthen weak roofs. The villagers listened carefully, realizing that Tom's careful thinking and planning had saved not only his cabin but also could help them protect theirs. Children came near Tom's cabin, curious about the second roof. They touched the wood carefully and asked questions about how it worked. Tom explained simply that the second roof carried the snow first, so the main roof beneath would remain safe. The children listened eagerly, impressed by the clever idea. Some villagers laughed quietly at themselves. They had mocked Tom before, but now they understood that preparation and thoughtfulness were important. They had underestimated the power of the storm and the wisdom of planning ahead. By the afternoon, the villagers began clearing the snow from the streets and helping each other repair minor damage. Teams worked together, lifting branches and moving fallen logs. Even though the blizzard had caused challenges, it also brought the village together. They learned the value of teamwork and careful planning. Tom stayed at his cabin, offering guidance when needed. He checked his firewood, made sure the food supplies were safe, and helped repair minor damage to nearby homes. Though he was tired from the storm, he felt calm and satisfied. The second roof had done exactly what he had hoped. Ben approached him again, carrying tools for repairs. "I have learned something important," he said. "I will build stronger supports on my roof next winter. I will plan ahead instead of rushing when the storm comes. Your cabin showed me the right way." Mary added, "We all laughed at Tom's strange idea, but it was clever and necessary. We will remember this winter for a long time. We must respect preparation and foresight." The sun began to shine through the clouds in the late afternoon. Snow sparkled on the rooftops and trees, making the village look beautiful and magical. The storm was over, but the memory of it remained fresh in everyone's mind. Villagers worked together, clearing snow from roads and repairing minor damage. The second roof of Tom's cabin became a symbol in the village. It reminded everyone that careful thought and planning could protect them when danger arrived. Children told stories about the cabin, and adults shared the lesson with neighbors and friends. Tom's calm and quiet actions during the blizzard had earned him respect and admiration. By evening, the village began to settle down. The cold remained, but people felt safer knowing they had survived the storm. They had learned to pay attention to signs, plan ahead, and prepare for challenges. The blizzard had tested everyone, and it had shown that foresight was a powerful tool. Tom sat by his fire, watching the snow settle on the second roof. He thought about the storm, the village, and the lessons that winter had taught. He knew that his preparation had saved him, and that the villagers had learned an important truth. Planning ahead, working carefully, and thinking about the future were not foolish. They were the keys to safety and survival. The villagers would not forget this winter. They had laughed at Tom, but now they respected him. They had mocked the second roof, but now they understood its value. The blizzard had been harsh, but it had also brought wisdom to the village. Tom looked around his cabin. Everything was intact, warm, and safe. The second roof above him had protected the home perfectly. Outside, the village was busy clearing snow and repairing damage. The villagers worked together, sharing lessons and helping one another. By nightfall, the village was calm again. The streets were cleared enough for walking, and most homes were safe. People returned to their families, grateful to be warm and protected. Tom stayed near his fire, feeling a quiet pride. His careful planning had worked, and he had helped others understand the importance of preparation. The storm had passed, leaving the village covered in snow but full of respect and understanding. Tom's second roof had not only saved his home but had also taught the villagers an important lesson. Preparation, foresight, and careful thought could make a difference between danger and safety. The blizzard had challenged the village, but it had also brought people together. It had shown that clever thinking and planning could save lives. Tom's cabin, with its strong second roof, became a symbol of wisdom and foresight. The villagers would remember this winter forever, and they would never forget the lesson that one man's careful planning had taught them. The mountains were quiet now. Snow covered the forest, roads, and rooftops. The wind had stopped, and the village rested. Tom's cabin, safe and warm, stood as a reminder of what preparation could accomplish. The villagers had survived the storm, and they had learned an important truth. Careful thought and action could protect against even the harshest challenges. Winter had fully settled over the village. The snow remained thick on the rooftops, roads, and fields. Icicles hung from every roof, sparkling in the sunlight. The forest was quiet under its heavy blanket of white. Life slowed down, and villagers stayed indoors, tending fires, cooking warm meals, and keeping themselves safe from the cold. Tom's cabin remained as solid and safe as ever. The second roof had proven its strength during the blizzard, and now it carried the weight of the snow with ease. Villagers who walked by often stopped to look at it. Children pointed and whispered to their parents, asking about the unusual roof. Some older villagers shook their heads, still surprised by the cleverness of the design. The blizzard had passed, but its lessons remained. Many villagers had experienced damage to their homes, while Tom's cabin had survived without even a scratch. People began to realize that laughter and mockery were not signs of truth. Planning ahead, careful thinking, and preparation could save lives. Tom had done more than protect his home. He had taught the village a lesson they would never forget. Ben approached Tom one morning. He carried a notebook and pencil, ready to take notes. "I want to prepare better for next winter," he said earnestly. "Can you show me how to strengthen my roof and store my supplies more carefully?" Tom nodded and smiled. "Of course," he said. "It is not difficult, but it takes planning and effort. You have to think ahead, even when everything seems calm." Mary came as well. She had already begun reinforcing her home and had a list of improvements she wanted to make. "I will follow your example," she said. "We laughed at your cabin, but now I see that preparation matters more than comfort or appearances." Villagers began coming to Tom for advice. He showed them how to tie wooden beams for extra strength, how to clear snow safely, and how to store food, water, and firewood for emergencies. He taught them how to use ropes to secure the roof and how to make small shelters for animals during storms. Everyone listened carefully, realizing that Tom's ideas were practical, simple, and effective. The children were fascinated by the story of the blizzard and the second roof. They gathered near the cabin and asked questions about how it worked. Tom explained patiently, showing them the space between the roofs and how it allowed wind to pass while keeping snow off the first roof. The children listened with wide eyes, imagining themselves building clever cabins like Tom's in the future. the village slowly began to change. People repaired damaged homes and strengthened their roofs. They organized teams to help each other in case another blizzard arrived. They stored extra firewood, food, and water. The sense of care and planning spread through the community. Tom's quiet wisdom had inspired everyone to think ahead and be prepared. One evening, the village elder came to Tom's cabin. He looked at the second roof, then at the neat piles of firewood and the warm glow from inside. "You have taught the village an important lesson," he said. "Your preparation saved your home and inspired others to prepare. You have done something very valuable." Tom nodded humbly. "I only did what I thought was right," he said. "I wanted to be ready. I never expected praise or recognition. I only wanted to be safe and show others that careful planning works." The elder smiled. "That is why people respect you. Not because your roof is clever, but because you acted with thought and foresight. Others can learn from your example." The days passed, and the villagers continued to repair and strengthen their homes. They worked together, clearing snow from roads and helping those whose roofs had been damaged. Tom occasionally helped with advice, but most of the work was done by neighbors helping neighbors. The sense of community had grown stronger after the storm, and people felt closer to each other. The children often visited Tom's cabin. They liked to hear stories about the storm and how the second roof had protected him. They asked him questions about how to plan and prepare for challenges. Tom answered each question carefully, enjoying the curiosity and excitement in their voices. Winter remained cold, but the village had learned to live with it wisely. People respected the power of nature, and they respected the wisdom of careful preparation. Tom's cabin, standing strong and safe, became a symbol of resilience and thoughtfulness. One sunny afternoon, Ben visited Tom's cabin again. He looked at the second roof with admiration. "I never thought I would say this," he said, "but I am glad you built that roof. It has taught all of us something important." Tom smiled. "It is not just about the roof," he said. "It is about thinking ahead, preparing for challenges, and acting carefully. That is what keeps people safe." Mary added, "We laughed at your idea before, but now we understand. I will tell everyone in the village that preparation is better than fear." The villagers began sharing their lessons with each other. They helped neighbors repair their homes, store food, and plan for the next winter. The second roof of Tom's cabin was no longer strange to them. It was a sign of wisdom, safety, and foresight. As winter progressed, the village remained calm even during heavy snowfall. Roads were cleared, roofs were strong, and families were prepared. The blizzard had shown the strength of nature, but it had also shown the strength of careful thinking. Tom's actions had changed the village forever. One evening, Tom stood outside his cabin and looked at the stars. The mountains were quiet and covered in snow. The village slept peacefully, safe in their homes. Tom felt a sense of satisfaction. He had not only protected his home, but he had helped his neighbors learn to protect theirs. The second roof had been more than wood and nails. It had been a lesson, a shield, and a symbol of wisdom. The villagers never forgot that winter. They remembered the blizzard, the broken roofs, and the houses that had survived. Most of all, they remembered Tom and his second roof. They had laughed at him once, but now they respected him deeply. He had shown them that preparation, careful thought, and action could make all the difference. The snow continued to fall lightly over the village, but everyone was ready. The lessons of the storm remained, and the villagers worked together to protect their homes and families. Tom's cabin stood proudly at the edge of the forest, its second roof carrying the snow safely. It was a quiet reminder of the importance of foresight and planning. As winter drew on, the village grew stronger. People respected the power of nature and the importance of preparation. Children told stories of Tom's cabin and the second roof, and adults shared the lessons with each other. The village had survived the blizzard, and it had grown wiser because of it. Tom continued living in his cabin quietly. He still watched the sky, the clouds, and the wind. He still prepared for each coming winter, but now the villagers came to him for guidance. He had earned their respect not through words or pride, but through careful action and thoughtfulness. The second roof above Tom's cabin remained strong through many more winters. It was a reminder that ideas that seem strange can sometimes be the most important. The villagers had learned that laughter and mockery did not matter when safety was at stake. Preparation, foresight, and careful action were what truly protected them. The winter ended slowly, the snow melted, and spring returned to the village. Birds sang again, flowers began to bloom, and the villagers returned to their daily work. But the memory of the blizzard and Tom's second roof stayed with them. It had taught them the value of planning ahead, of thinking carefully, and of taking action before danger arrived. Tom's cabin remained at the edge of the forest, quiet, strong, and ready. The second roof above it stood as a symbol of wisdom, safety, and foresight. The villagers respected it, and they respected the man who had built it. He had shown them that preparation was more important than appearances, and that careful thought could protect lives. The village would never forget that winter. They had laughed at Tom at first, but now they admired him. They had learned an important lesson about planning, preparation, and respect for nature. And Tom continued to live in his cabin, calm, ready, and safe, knowing that careful thinking had saved him and inspired others to do the same.